your only focus will be on impeaching Trump, not in trying to work together, not in trying to move things forward.
Right.
You want to impeach Trump. You don't matter. You don't count.
Yeah.
So who cares? Go ahead and don't come to the speech. As a matter of fact, don't even bother coming to D.C. for a while. Guess what? Nobody will notice. Nobody will care.
What do you got for me? Yeah, what do you got for me? Baby, would you stand and fight?
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of On the Issues with Chris and Mike. Mike, good to see you again, my friend.
You too, Chris. Yeah.
Before we get talking about any important topics, I want to do a quick commercial out there. If you're watching this and you like this content, folks, I don't have an advertising budget. I need you to hit that like button, hit the follow button, do all the things, do the subscribe in YouTube and the bell notifications and all the things. Make sure that you spread this message so that we can keep doing these. It's on you, folks. I need your help. Let's spread this. All right, Mike.
Yep.
Top of the list. We got to talk about USA hockey.
Absolutely. Men's and women's. It was awesome.
Exactly.
I watched both games. I thought they were fantastic. The women dominated. I said during the women's hockey game, I said, we should beat Canada here. This is a team we should beat, mainly because it had a lot of Badgers on it. I mean, the women's Badgers, the Badgers women's team is amazing, and it's been top of the heap for a long time. I said we should beat Canada with that. The men, I'm not so sure. I mean, they got a really good team in Canada.
That was a good game, man.
It really was. It really was. I join with Canada's coach in that I don't like the overtime format. Not a big fan.
Yeah.
But it is what it is. So. And Jack Hughes making that shot, and then his speech afterward. It was amazing. It's Jack.
That gritty, ballsy, toothless guy.
Right. And he says,
proud to be American.
Right. This is all for our country. We love being Americans and all that kind of stuff. It was fantastic.
And he called out Hellenbeck, too. I mean, that guy was brilliant the whole game. It was amazing that he won.
I said halfway through, I said, this is a Jim Craig performance, Jim Craig. And it was different though, because in 1980, and I've watched that game too. I watched it back then. I was 16, but, I watched it since, and Jim Craig had an amazing game. He had some remarkable stops. But in the same sense, we still had some offense going.
Yeah.
I mean, after about the midpoint of the second period, we had no offense at all.
I was going to say, it was like 2-1.
Right? We were getting crushed. I've seen memes out there and guys who were saying, all right, guys, bring it in. All right. We got crushed on the ice. We won the game. That's true. But we got crushed. We should not have won this. And it's true. We just didn't have the offense that they did, but we had the goalie, and it was,
thank God.
He was amazing. He was, I've never seen I've watched some hockey in my day, and I've never seen a performance quite like that.
Yeah, it was a miracle. I mean, it was just fantastic. At work, just everybody's talking about it. And somebody asked, it was a younger guy who wasn't around for 1980.
Yeah.
And he said, well, what do you think, Chris? Is this as important as the 1980s? And I said, it's not as important.
Right.
Beating the Soviets back then, that was a major, major deal for us.
That was big. Yeah, that was big. It came at a similar time in that we're all kind of down on our country, or not all of us, but we're all worried about what's going on and everything like that. And for a brief period of time, we're able to all come together. Now, that coming together lasted a lot longer in 1980 than it does today.
Yeah.
But that's kind of the nature of the beast.
Yeah, it's usually like, well, maybe top of the hour news, and then everything goes back to the usual.
Yeah. Right.
He said, she said kind of stuff.
Right. And of course you've got, I don't understand, you've got the liberals and some of the Democrats who are saying that they felt uneasy, being proud of the United States and everything like that. That is such a tiny minority that it's kind of like, not to segue too soon here, but the State of the Union is tonight. All right.
Mm-hmm.
We're taping this before the State of the Union. And there's 20 Democrats that aren't going to show up.
Right.
Who cares? I mean, right now.
Well, anyone even notice?
Right. You don't count right now anyway. You're in the minority. You have no say. Now, granted, you may win the majority after the November in the Assembly or in the House. I don't think you win the Senate, but you could win in the House. Your only focus will be on impeaching Trump, not in trying to work together, not in trying to move things forward.
Right.
You want to impeach Trump. You don't matter. You don't count.
Yeah.
So who cares? Go ahead and don't come to the speech. As a matter of fact, don't even bother coming to D.C. for a while. Guess what? Nobody will notice. Nobody will care.
Nobody will care. Yep. And that is such a good point. And it is a good segue because, like you said, that speech is tonight. And just off air, we were talking about the economy is going to be a big topic. What do you think the president's going to say about that?
He's going to talk about the advances we've made in the economy. And I wrote it down somewhere, and I don't remember where it was, but I knew that this was going to be an issue. I wrote down the prices for gas and milk and eggs and everything like that in December of 2020. Because I wanted to know what it was going to be like at the end of that, and then compare that with the prices of all those things in December of 2024.
Smart.
During Biden's years, we had a 30% inflation increase.
Yep.
30%. So anything that costs $1 was now costing $1.30. So you take a look at the price of gas, price of milk, everything like that. Has it come down to what it was when President Trump left the first time? No, of course not.
Yeah.
It can't. But it has certainly leveled off, and we're seeing light at the end of the tunnel for a number of these things.
Yeah.
And so we're at a point where perhaps we can get back, but you have to wash out so many of the things that Biden did. And the biggest one was just throwing so much cash into the economy with no value behind it. You know, I mean, that was, you knew inflation had to come in place when you're throwing that kind of cash into it.
Well, I remember a lot of us talking about the idea that as soon as President Trump took office and then he began working through some of these issues where it was the idea of energy and bringing those prices back down to normal again.
Right.
Getting all of the regulations out of the way that the what do you call it? The global warming crowd all wanted to do.
Yep.
And then finally we have President Trump comes in, starts eliminating all that just BS regulation,
right,
and those prices start coming down. Well, like to your point, I mean, I think most of the impacts that we're seeing in the economy now are because a lot of that.
Absolutely.
Destroying those regulations, bringing costs back down to normal again,
right,
is making a big impact. And of course, tariffs had something to do with that too.
Certainly.
But now that's all in turmoil.
Right. And it's interesting because, you know, we had, I think it was Kavanaugh who in the Supreme Court who kind of outlined for the president how he could continue this plan and how he could continue. But it's also clearly recognized that presidents have used this so many times over the years, and this is the only president that this Supreme Court is going to stop.
Yeah.
Whatever. He decided, all right, fine, we'll do 15% globally, whatever. You know, it's an economic tool that not even all conservatives agree with. And I understand that. Tariffs aren't the greatest thing in the world.
It's a delicate balancing act you have to do.
It is, unless you've been getting screwed for as long as we have. And we truly have. I mean, pardon my French, which I'm surprised at how often the French cuss, but it's, pardon my French as far as, there's so many countries that were just taking so much advantage of us, and both sides and our presidents, from Bush to Biden and Obama, they were comfortable with that. It's like, yeah, that's fine. You know, we're the richest country in the nation. Go ahead and take us.
It's that whole guilt kind of thing that the rest of the world puts on us, and I mean, to your point, President Trump said no more.
Right, America first. You know, I mean, white guilt is probably one of the most fatal self-inflicted diseases there is. I don't understand it at all. It's like, yes, we are successful and we'll do what we can to help you, but we're not going to be taken advantage of.
Right on.
And that's what he's doing as far as the economy and tariffs and everything like that. But you've touched on the most important things. Energy costs drive everything. You know, we have to get products to market. We have to get ourselves to work, you know, all that. And that's one of the basic things, that and housing costs. Those two things, if you can get them in line, you know, if you can try to get a control on those two things, which is why Trump has been so hard on Powell as far as the interest rates and the Fed and how much they've kept those up. If you can get interest rates down, you get the energy costs down. That because energy also, you got to heat and run manufacturing plants and everything along those lines. You've got to do all those things. As those prices come down, the price of everything else can come down. Everything else will drop because of that. And that's what he's focused on. And that's what I think he's going to tout a bit tonight. It's, as we talked a little bit offline, this is a little bit like 1982. I was around. I'm not sure which you were, 6. I don't.
I was about 10.
Okay, 10. So you might not have paid that much attention to it, but in 1982, I remember that it was just, you know, it was Reagan had come in. It was, you know, we were in the middle of a recession. People had lost their jobs. Inflation rates, or I'm sorry, interest rates were still in the high double digits. I mean, when Carter was in office, just 2 years prior to that, interest rates for a mortgage were 18 and 19%. People don't remember that, but imagine.
My parents remember that for sure.
As do mine. You know, I mean, imagine if our interest rates today were 18 or 19%, we'd be losing our minds. And of course, we'd see recessions.
Yeah.
What we saw in 1982 was the first attempts of Reagan to try and turn that around, and he took some of the blame in the elections in 1982.
Right.
2 years later, it was the biggest landslide in presidential history, and it was morning in America again. I see the framework for that still coming in the Trump administration. We're getting to a point where we're getting government spending in line, energy costs in line, regulations in line, bringing all that back to a little more sane level and recognizing that the economy will take care of itself if the government doesn't screw it up. And we've just gone through 4 years, and even before that under Obama, we've gone through 12 years of the government doing all they can to screw it up with the regulations and all the other different crazy stuff.
Well, and based on what we're seeing coming out of Minnesota recently and in other locations of the kind of fraud that's coming out of these places,
Right.
I don't know if it was just by accident or if it was deliberately done, like almost sabotaging our economy in a way.
Right. Well, again, remember my first rule in observation in government: the best and brightest are not in government. And Tim Walz
Right.
certainly shows us that. And rule number 2 is, if anytime you think it's conspiracy or ineptitude, it's ineptitude every time. See rule number 1. So, I think for those who have the ability to take advantage of feeble-minded people like the governor of Minnesota, they did it intentionally, of course. They took what was documented at one point of $9 billion in fraud. I think that number's gone up since now.
It's closer to 20 now.
20 billion. Okay. And just to put that in perspective, I saw recently, because we have carrier groups in the Mediterranean. We're looking at attacking Iraq and shutting down their nuclear program, which
Iran.
Or Iran, I'm sorry. 6 of 1.
Don't give me a flashback.
No, again, that's dating myself. It's like, okay, but with Iran, we have to make sure they don't have nuclear weapons, and we're going to shut down that system. I get it. So we have carrier groups there, and I saw on the news that it costs $7 million a day for us to have a carrier group in the Mediterranean. That's a remarkable amount of money. And so I put pencil to paper and I said, I wonder how that compares. We could really only keep the carrier group there 3.5 years before we spent the same amount of money of the fraud that Minnesota came up with.
Wow.
3.5 years of a carrier group sitting in the Mediterranean just gets us to the $9 billion. Well, now it's $20 billion. I calculated it at 9. Now we're looking at 7 years. You could keep it there to match the fraud that Minnesota has lost.
And I love that perspective because it really puts it into the perspective of what's happening in this country.
Right.
And Minnesota is just the tip of the iceberg. You've got all the mortgage fraud that's going on in California, and God only knows what other states are doing.
Right. And as we saw in Minnesota, a lot of this money was going to groups that were then funneling it back to politicians or funneling it back to political action groups, the foundations, as it were, the ones that are politically active. I mean, if they're doing that in Minnesota, you can imagine what's going on in New York and California and other Democrat controlled states. It always frustrates me when I see that. It also frustrates me that Republicans just haven't done it better. It's like if you're gonna get that kind of fraud going, then Republicans should do it better, which would be a great way to stop it.
Exactly. I was going to say that. The moment Republicans start doing it, then it'll stop.
Exactly.
Then because the Democrats will make sure we hang for these kinds of violations.
Absolutely.
If you're a Democrat, you can get away with any kind of violations of law.
Clearly.
But if a Republican tries to do it, holy cow, they're going to hang us from a light post.
Right. No question.
No, I'm glad you said that because that is the way it is these days.
Yep. It's been that way for some time, actually, but certainly it's these days, absolutely.
And like you were saying, you're talking about the early 1980s, the environment, I mean, there was still Democrats and Republicans. What's changed? And what I keep coming down to is this idea that they hate Trump more than they love America right now.
Oh, I mean, yes, but again, it's not necessarily the elected leaders. And this is, we've talked about this in the past. I think what changed was social media. The ability for the lowest opinion to suddenly become one of the strongest.
That's a good point.
One of the and it
The
really
lunatics are running the madhouse right now.
exactly. I mean, when the New York Times is starting to be a little bit more of a voice of reason, something's wrong. I mean, that's
point.
crazy. The mainstream media the mainstream media just doesn't count anymore. I mean, the number of people who continue to read the newspaper or watch the evening news, I don't understand that. They're not getting any kind of news that is pertinent to what's actually going on in the world. When reporters decided that they were no longer going to report but be agents of change,
Right.
which was, I don't know, the early 70s, maybe Vietnam, I
bet you're right.
Yeah, we are now seeing the fruits of all of that labor of reporters just going out and saying, I'm just going to be the louder protester of everything else. So I mean, that's where things really change. But the fact is that, as I've talked about in the past, when I was in the legislature, I was able to work well with my colleagues on the other side of the aisle. We didn't have much choice. I had a 52-seat majority and the Democratic governor and the Democratic Senate. If we were going to do anything, we had to work together, and we did. But I also didn't have everybody tweeting that Representative Hipsch, Speaker Hipsch, whatever, is now meeting with Governor Doyle to try and work out the budget. I didn't have that problem of the number like we've seen with Robin Vos. I mean, Speaker Vos has gone through more turmoil and more attacks from the right than he's ever had to face from the left.
That's a good point.
And that's just ridiculous as far as the amount of ignorance that is lodged in those type of attacks is stunning. And it's one that we're, unfortunately, those who have it are extremely proud of.
Yeah, no, that is a good point. I think social media definitely is not making our country better.
Not making the world better.
It's not making the world better. That's a good point. Well, to some extent, it's kind of interesting. Going back to the idea,
news we've never heard before.
Right.
And people are getting,
and like I was about to say, going back to the idea of like Iran and some of the things reading about, like, Starlink being used by some of these protesters in Iran.
Yep.
Who otherwise, I mean, the country is turning off all of their message, all of their news capabilities. They have no idea what's happening in the world unless they're getting it from a Starlink.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, it's true. It's unfortunate that the lowest of our people are having quite the voice they have. Now, again, I go back to I'll fight to the death for your right to say it. But why in the world would I have to believe it?
Yeah.
Why in the world should I even care what you're saying or talking about?
Well, it's a difference between being able to say something and having a right to amplify it.
Right.
You do not have a right to amplify it.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. We'll not get down this rabbit hole, but I mean, we clearly, and again, social media is a tool. It's kind of like we should outlaw guns. No, we should outlaw idiots with guns. That's what we need to do.
Outlaw crime.
Right. Outlaw. Yeah, right. Exactly. Right. Outlaw crime. I mean, the social media is the tool. The idiots behind social media are the ones that are driving it. And we have idiots on both sides. We certainly have our number of idiots. There's no question. And they show themselves every day.
Yep.
It's unfortunate, but it is the way. So that's why I think you go back to the whole idea that's what's changed. I mean, we see now that we're going to see more retirements from this Congress than we've had in over 100 years. The people who are going to be elected to replace them aren't more moderate, Chris. They're not coming in with we should all work together and try and solve the problems. They're going to be
really
social media. Yeah, they're going to be social media products. They're going to be products of the deepest fringes of both sides. And it's going to get more polarized.
Man, I don't know if we want to dive into that right there.
Yeah.
That is a rabbit hole that would be very interesting to tell. How do we solve that? Because like you're saying, I mean, it's well known, like social media puts everybody in their own little silo.
Yeah.
It's going to feed me information from a conservative perspective. It's going to feed some of my friends and family information from a liberal perspective.
Right.
And we're never going to be able to talk to each other anymore because we're only hearing our side.
Yeah.
How do you solve that, man?
Well, as we've talked about, unfortunately, we get the government we deserve. And we will deserve that because we are unwilling. It's kind of lazy to think that, that maybe somebody else has a point of view that we should consider. And it's gotten a lot easier to not do that because now I don't disagree with you. You're evil. You're
Right.
you're not just
Well,
wrong. You're a bad person.
And maybe that's the thing that, like, something that I've been personally working on myself is trying to not reach out, go to other sources. I'll go to the CNNs, I'll go to the
Yeah.
CBSs, I'll go to the BBC
Yeah.
just to see what other people are saying about
PBS.
even the PBS
right.
is out there.
Really,
Yeah.
really crazy.
But yeah, if I'm really bored,
Right.
but yeah, I mean, I know there are others that are doing that as well.
Yeah.
But how do we, I guess, just keep encouraging people to do it more and more, I guess, is probably the best thing to do.
Yeah. I mean, and again, it comes to a point where
leading by example and then encouraging others to do it as well.
And we also have to confront problems that aren't simply going to be solved in a partisan basis. And we have the luxury of not really having those. I mean, right now, costs are very high. An entire generation is convinced that they will never have the American dream. They cannot get into a home.
First-time homeowners now, 40 years old, when that used to be solidly in the 20s.
Yes, absolutely.
And now it's doubled. It's crazy.
Right. And some of that is expectation. Some of it is cost, no question. I mean, especially over the last 4 years, we've seen skyrocket.
Well, all the logistics problems that we ran into. And I mean, there's still so many things working its way through the markets.
Yeah, supply chains and everything along those lines during COVID, and the ridiculousness of the government handling of COVID. But what I don't know that people will ever recognize is that when the government has really ground to a halt, as I'm hoping we will see if the Democrats win the House of Representatives and the Senate stays Republican. If that happens, the government will grind to a halt, and we as the American people will do fine. We'll do very well. If they can't pass any new regulation, if they can't screw anything else up, we'll be fine. And our economy will strengthen, and we'll do great. Yeah. It's when government, especially as we saw during the Biden years, comes in and decides they're going to social engineer everything, or when an entire generation believes that a Zoran Mondani, or whatever his name is the answer to the largest city. I mean, they've had one of the biggest snowstorms in the last 24 hours that they've seen in 100 years. He can't even clear the streets. Yeah. I mean, that was the big joke, is that in order to come out and be willing and be one of the snow removal people, that he was going to pay $19 an hour to come and shovel, which, by the way, he had just declared that a living wage was $30 an hour. But they're going to pay $19 an hour. You need at least 2 forms of ID, 2 forms of 5 different sources of ID. You had to have a driver's license, you had to have a passport, you had some sort of ID to shovel snow. But to vote, come on in. It doesn't matter who you are.
Well done, sir. Because I was just about to segue into that next topic. Good. The SAVE Act was passed in the House of Representatives, and now there's all kinds of talk about whether or not they're going to ditch the filibuster and make sure that it actually passes the Senate. Right. Where do you see this going?
I think that if this really, I mean, there's no pressure right now. It's only February. They won't lose. The election doesn't come till November. If there isn't something that is done, I believe that the filibuster will probably be scrapped. I think that they will do that. It was our senator, actually, Johnson, who said, look, the Democrats are going to do this as soon as they are able to control the chamber. So why wouldn't we do it now to try and do some things that are good? Because they're going to do it to pass more regulation. They're going to do it to pack courts. They're going to expand the Supreme Court. They're going to they're going to put 51st and 52nd states in and pack them with Democrats. I mean, they're going to do a lot of shenanigans when they have the opportunity, and they'll do it by just scrapping the filibuster. The filibuster is something that, we see as a valuable tool to the craziness that we see on the other side. I don't think the other side recognizes that they can stop our craziness as they see it, and the SAVE Act is one that they think is, they see the SAVE Act as crazy because supposedly we're disenfranchising people. No, we're not. What we're doing is making sure that you don't get to rig elections anymore.
Right. And 83% of the people agree with us on that issue.
And that's why I think that...
And 70-some% of Democrats even agree with us on that issue.
That's why I think this is an issue that's going to pass without the scrapping of the filibuster.
Okay.
Yeah, that's my guess, is that will be the case.
I thought it was interesting. I heard Mark Levin the other night talking about this, and I can't remember where he got this from, but he gave them credit. The idea of having a constitutional amendment in the Senate and then see where that goes about the filibuster.
Okay.
and then see where that goes. Like, do the Democrats really want to keep the filibuster in this current, economic environment that we
Yeah.
have?
Yeah.
And would they be willing to codify that in a constitutional amendment?
Right.
And then he said, based on what we learned from that experience, then decide whether or not to get rid of the filibuster. Because if they're not serious about really keeping it and codifying it as a constitutional amendment, then just to your point, they're ready to weaponize it themselves.
Here's my only question to Mark, and to that point of view. When have you ever seen that the Democrats are in any way ashamed by their blatant hypocrisy? Never.
Good
Never.
point.
I mean, they'll happily go in and say, we'll pass a constitutional
They'll play the
amendment
game.
Absolutely. We'll put this filibuster on. Absolutely do that. And when they take control, they won't even remember or care that they took that vote.
That is a great point.
So, I mean, we're the only ones that still care about our integrity as far as our votes.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous that we continue to expect the same from the Democrats, because they show time and time and time again that they have no interest in that.
That is a really good point. I hadn't thought about it that way, but I thought it was interesting to see, like, okay, what stages do we take in order to make sure that this is working out properly? Because I'm like you, I am very concerned about if we eliminate the filibuster, then it's just we're just handing it to whoever has the next majority.
Right. It's the tyranny of the majority in the legislature, and it's why the founding fathers thought this was an important tool.
Yeah.
It's been extremely frustrating, the filibuster in the Senate, and of course, the those on our side of the aisle who don't really care much about fact and just prefer a good story, will blame the Republicans for not getting the SAVE Act passed. We'll blame the Republicans for not getting certain things passed because we should have just scrapped the filibuster. You have to think these things through a little bit,
Yeah.
and that's something sometimes our people on our side don't do that well.
Well, and we got to play the long game when it comes to some of these things. There's a lot at stake.
Yep.
And, it might not be in the next 5 years. It might be in 10 years or even longer when we start to see major impacts that we never thought about.
Correct.
So, yeah, I'm with you. We got to be very careful about it. I did like the idea. I think it was Senator Johnson who said making sure that we have like a standing filibuster for sure. Just begin with that.
Mhm.
None of this, just you can just call it in kind of thing that
Yeah.
they do.
Oh, that. Oh, yes.
The
Going back-
cloture, I think, is
going back to the Mr. Smith goes to Washington one.
right.
Yeah,
Force
that-
people to stand in their filibuster, not just, call it out by
Yeah.
name or whatever.
They got rid of that in the 70s, I think, or something along those lines, where it's like, you know what, I'm going to filibuster, and I don't want to vote, and so you're going to. Okay, well, that doesn't mean anything.
No,
You should.
you
have to
got
get
to
up
earn
and
it.
explain. Absolutely. We had filibustering in the assembly when I was there. When I was first elected to the assembly, we thought it was really smart when we took over the majority to say that the assembly will adjourn at midnight. No matter what we're doing, no matter what's going on at midnight, there will be no more legislation passed in the middle of the night, in the wee hours of the morning, blah, 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 blah. And so we decided that we would absolutely adjourn by midnight. So what did the Democrats do? They filibustered. I mean, Mark Pocan, who was in the assembly, sat there and read from the blue book. It's like, and then we had no rules to take away the microphone, and he just talked, and many of them did that. We learned our lesson and recognized, okay, we can't do that anymore. But I mean, those are the type of things that you if you're going to filibuster, get up and do it. Don't just say, yeah, I don't want to vote. Well, who cares what you want?
Yeah.
Get up and earn it.
Yeah, no, I think that is definitely a step that I'm interested in seeing happen. But we're obviously, everybody's watching this one. And the SAVE Act, I like what you said, though, that I never thought about that. The timing, we've got plenty of time, we probably June, July kind of a time frame, but
Sure.
in order to make sure that we're ready for the August primaries.
Yep. Well, and I think, we're going to have a convention this year, which is a little unusual. And I think it's going to be in Minneapolis, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh,
I could be wrong, but I've heard it's going to be in Minneapolis, which I think would be crazy to put it there, but regardless.
asking for trouble.
Yeah, exactly. I think it makes sense for our delegates and for our party to come together and say, this is something we want passed, and make it clear to everyone,
Yeah.
including the Susan Collinses of the world, that this needs to get passed.
Yeah, like
And-
night after night after night, having all of the different speeches all about that.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the SAVE Act is extremely important. It's so fundamental. It's stunning that we need that legislation.
I know.
But we absolutely do. When you see states like Michigan and others who are just handing out ballots like they're candy and tracking none of them and
Yeah.
figuring out, determining who's voting is not really important to them.
Well, and it was so funny. I think it was again Mark Levin who had a clip of Bernie Sanders talking about how difficult it was. I don't even know how to get my birth certificate. And some congressman was like, well, sir, I got my phone right here. I can just look up New York or whatever state he was in. Took him about 5 minutes to figure it out. It's all right there on your little phone. And Bernie Sanders had no clue how to look it up.
I don't doubt that he didn't.
Yeah.
And
well, you could probably get a staffer to help him with it.
Probably, right. And you go back to, I mean, that's another good example of the blatant hypocrisy that they have no problem with. How many speeches have we seen from Biden to Obama to Pelosi to all of them saying that we need to close our borders?
Yes.
We can't have illegal aliens coming into this country. You've got to have closed borders. Where did they go? Why don't we hear from them? They're still alive. All of these people are still alive.
It's funny how they keep debating themselves over the years.
Yes, indeed.
They just flip and flop and flip right back.
Yep.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
Well, some other things that are going on in the state. I put it at the top of my list for state news. Tom Tiffany received the endorsement from President Trump.
Yep.
And then shortly after that, Josh Schoeman dropped out of the race. Yeah. And now I'm really happy to see this. There's some like unity photos between the two of them out in Josh Schoeman's farm and stuff like that. So seeing everyone come together now, consolidating behind a candidate. Yeah. How do you feel like this race is going to go for the rest of the year?
Yeah, I think it's going to go very well for us now. We've consolidated. We've gotten to a point where we don't have to waste money in a primary. Josh is a good man, and he will be around for a long time. He's also, I think, learned some lessons from Scott Walker. Scott Walker ran against Mark Green and recognized that he wasn't going to beat Mark Green. And so he stepped back and he supported Mark. And when Mark lost, the heir apparent was Scott Walker, who then won 4 years
I had forgotten all about that.
Oh, yeah. No,
Good memory, man.
Well, I remember clearly because I had endorsed Mark Green when I was in legislature.
Yeah.
And yet Scott Walker still was willing to bring me into his cabinet 4 years later. But, and so I think it's important for the party to come together. It's important for us to consolidate around a message. And especially since we see just the absolute clown show that you see on the Democratic side. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's stunning. I'm assuming that it will still be the former lieutenant governor who will win the nomination. Yeah. I'm guessing that he will get it. He's eminently beatable, but we're also eminently able to screw it up. So this state is interesting as far as how it goes. But as we talked about, I'm not that concerned about who's governor. I want us to hold both houses of the legislature. I think it might be a challenge to hold the Senate, but I think we could. We'll keep the House. Or the Assembly. I'm not that concerned about that, but keeping the Senate will be a challenge. And what the Republicans, if they continue to hold all three branches or both houses and the governorship, it won't really matter because the Supreme Court will undo anything we've done.
That's right.
I mean, this Supreme Court, again, we've talked about the rule of 4, about to become the rule of 5 if we vote for the most liberal lunatic that we've ever seen run for Supreme Court judge.
Well, and speaking of lunacy, I'm on their email list.
Are you really?
Chris Taylor sent out an email. I don't know how to put this. As if it was coming from her dog. It was written on behalf of her dog.
Okay.
It was the most ridiculous, juvenile email I've ever seen.
Right.
Trying to fundraise for Chris Taylor. And I thought, wow, these people are nuts. But to your point, she has a shot at winning.
Oh, no, she's going to win. I mean, if Lazar doesn't do something soon, if they continue...
Well, she's doing something soon. She's going to be on this show next week.
Good. Tell her that we cannot continue to allow Christine Taylor to paint her, Maria Lazar, as the liberal, as the one who's soft on crime, as the one who's the extreme. Yeah. Chris Taylor especially, more than any of them we've faced, even Protasevich, who was a nutball, but even the craziness that they've talked about and that they've touted in the past, no one has a record quite like Chris Taylor, and we need to make it very clear.
She is a political activist, and there is evidence of it everywhere.
Yes. Take the worst AOC, far left, crazy Francesca Hung nutbag that we've seen in this country and in this state, and that's Chris Taylor. And the difference is that she will be in a position to move forward on that agenda.
Yeah.
She will basically say, we could go out there and say anything, and the legislature could pass anything and sign it by the governor. If she doesn't agree, she'll overturn it. Doesn't have to have any statutory or constitutional reason. They don't care about that. They don't have any. There is no such thing as previous decisions should stand. None of the tradition or the rules of the court will matter to these people.
Just look what they did with the governor's thing, where they took away the oversight from the legislature, and just handed it right into the governor and the bureaucracy
with no constitutional basis for that at all.
Zero. Zero basis.
They don't care.
They just made it up.
Right. And so, as much as I care about the governor's race, it will matter very little. Because we have relinquished the Supreme Court to the most left-wing liberals that this state has ever seen, and they will wreak havoc for the next 10 years.
Yeah, it really is a judicial oligarchy. These men and the kings and queens in black robes who think that they just run everything now. That's the biggest concern I have in the state right now, too.
Mine too. Yep.
Yeah. Where do we go from there?
Well, we've got we touched a little bit on what's going on in the Middle East, and whether or not we're going to go to war.
Mm-hmm.
We have never before, and I think it was I don't think it was the Secretary of the War, but it was one of the secretaries who said we've never. Oh, it was a former secretary. That's what it was. Who said we've never mounted this type of an offensive group and not used it before. So you've never seen mobilization quite like this and not had it used. I predicted that the president was actually going to use it this past Sunday, that he was going to invade this past Sunday, and it didn't happen.
My prediction still stands that it's going to happen during the State of the Union.
Oh, is that right?
I think he's going to give some kind of code word that people are either waiting for, the green light or the red light.
Well, that'll be interesting. There's supposed to be negotiations that happen 2 days from today, on Thursday. I think that it's possible that he will give that Thursday negotiation the opportunity for Iran to completely capitulate. And if they don't, he's going in. I mean,
but what is capitulation?
Meeting all of his demands. You give up all of
but they say they'll capitulate. They'll say anything.
Mm-hmm.
This is the thing we've learned from Iran over the years.
Yep.
They will say things. They will obfuscate. They just lie.
Clearly. I mean, they'll do that frequently. And it may be that we need to just prove to them that, what is it, the FAFO?
I don't think there's a choice. I think we have to go in there. We have to eliminate their military so that the people can run their country again.
And more importantly than that, we need to eliminate their ability to have a nuclear weapon.
Oh, of course. Yeah, without question.
Those lunatics should never have a nuclear weapon.
Right. No, that's well said. That is definitely at the top of the list. But I think it's a done deal. I don't see any other way.
Yeah.
I don't see any other way. That regime has got to go. There's no way we can have a world with that regime in any power.
Right. Agreed. We know things that are going on there that supposedly, had they known what was going on in World War II, we would have done more.
Yeah.
I don't know that we could have done much more than we did, but in the same sense, you can't simply know what's going on there and do nothing and somehow justify that you're going to do nothing.
Right. Well, and the tricky part, I think, is going to be how.
Yep.
What are the clear objectives that we're going to have?
Right.
And then making sure that we don't get too deep into the weeds, like what we learned from Iraq. Let's not do that again.
Right. You got to have an exit strategy.
Exactly.
No
a solid exit strategy. That's a good way to put it. I was thinking making sure that we have clear objectives. And once they're achieved, we get out of the way.
Right.
Let the people take back their own country.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's kind of like we screwed up in Afghanistan. Hopefully we won't screw up Venezuela. I mean, it's things that you got to, and I think that what we've seen with the Trump administration is that they have a plan, and they go in and they follow through with it. The question is whether or not we're able to achieve that before the next election. Because should the Democrats come in the next presidential election, they could undo all of it, as we saw with Biden in Afghanistan.
Yeah, that is a really, really good point.
So
Biden screwed up that entire situation.
Yeah, no question. And for no reason. I mean, I don't know what promise he thought he was keeping. I don't know what he thought he was going to achieve there, but to pull out of Afghanistan was as bad as we did in Vietnam. It was crazy.
Yeah. Well, and all the equipment that was lost, and just so stupid.
Right. And the people who paid the price that were on the ground there.
Yeah.
It's unforgivable.
Yeah. 13 soldiers that were there, and God only knows how many of our allies that were there, the translators that our teams were using. And
Right.
it was absolutely disgusting what they ended up doing.
True. Now, before we come together again, we will have gone through March Madness.
Yeah.
And I'm going to predict right now, not to just do a complete spin on this, I'm going to predict right now that UW-Madison's going to the Elite Eight. I think the Badgers are on a roll.
That's
right
bold.
now. It is. I think I think that they have figured out, especially with their recent loss to Ohio State and then coming back and beating Iowa, they've kind of figured out what needs to happen, what needs to be done. So I'm going out there right now and saying Badgers are going to the Elite Eight, and I'm putting that on my my pool when I fill out my sheet.
All right. The prediction is out there now.
Yep. That's it. It's
well said. All right. Back to some state news.
Yeah.
Assembly Speaker Robin Voss, we hinted about this earlier.
Yep.
He's decided not to run for re-election now. You mentioned you don't think that's going to impact the Republicans losing the assembly?
No, I don't think so. And it's mainly because Robin knows how to win the majority, and he's not going to leave by handing the chamber to the Democrats. Let me just reflect on Robin a little bit. I was in the legislature, I think 3 or 4 terms before he came in, and he came in brilliant. I mean, he's one of the college Republicans, one of the young Republicans who really came up. We were all kind of trained under the Reagan era. And he came in, he was brilliant. He was a little misguided at times, and it's one of the things that, we worked together. I sat next to him on the floor when we were both in there. And I explained to him how we needed to get things done. He didn't always agree. And we debated on many things. He's from a very different part of the state. It's kind of like I said with the United States, it's the United States of America, not the United People of America. In the same sense, we're all elected from 99 different seats with 99 different constituencies. And so we didn't always agree, but we always understood what we were going to try to achieve. And Robin was able to do that in ways that even I had not dreamed that we could. He had a little bit of he had a baptism by fire with Act 10, but during Act 10, he was also able to get a number of reforms through that nobody was paying attention to. A lot of the election reforms that we saw, I mean, you remember we used to vote straight party in this state. They got rid of that. They changed the contribution limits to PAC so that the candidates would have a little bit more influence than the third party people and the PAC money would have. He's also just been able to do a number of things, especially with Governor Walker, and now hold the line with a number of things with Governor Evers. I mean, I joked with him via text when the governor gave his last State of the State address, I think it was a week ago.
Yeah, last week.
Yeah. I joked with him. I said, when he goes out and tries to take credit for a number of the economic things that have happened in the state, say, yeah, that's because you signed our budget for the last 3 terms. It's like, and he really did. I mean, if we take a look at the budgets that were introduced by the Evers administration and compare them to what he actually signed, they don't even come close to reflecting.
Not even close. Billions of waste.
Right. He signed the Republican budgets. And so basically, we've had a Republican governor who signed the Republican legislature, but in the end, you still have to write those budgets. And the legislature, the Republican legislature in both houses, have been able to do that and keep keep the state in a pretty good situation. We still have a significant amount of money that we need to try and reduce as far as taxes, but we have a remarkable surplus that we certainly didn't have when we came in under the Walker administration. In 2010, we had a $6 billion deficit, $6 billion. We're now at $4 billion surplus. And they're debating over how to get that back to the Wisconsin people. That's fantastic.
I saw Senator Teston put something out about a rebate check to everybody.
Right. I'm not a huge fan of the rebate checks because I was there the last time we did a rebate, and it's kind of like just pouring money into like they did when Biden came in, and even under the Trump administration toward the end, where they just funneled money in. Is the I don't remember what they called it, but it was to just try and restart the economy by just dumping money into the This is a situation where I think you build in tax cuts. You reduce, you do
longer term,
long-term permanent savings for the people of Wisconsin.
Yeah, not just one and done like they're talking about.
Right, exactly. I mean, yes.
Or maybe a combination of the two.
Right. And Evers, because he's governor, will demand some more money in schools. Fine. I get that too. We right now put more money into schools than any other, actually 2 or 3 top spending areas combined.
Yeah.
We put more of that into schools.
Putting more into schools is fine as long as we get results.
Right.
That's the key. We got to have
Yep.
accountability for those tax dollars.
Totally. And it needs to go into the classroom. I'd be all in favor of teacher salary increases. Let's make
Yes.
sure we get better quality and top quality teachers, and we're able to hold on to them.
Well, I
That'd be
have seen some good arguments though that a lot of the costs in many schools is going to some of the mental health issues that they're dealing with these days.
Right.
And so I'm like, it makes sense
Yep.
that there would be more cost in administration because you have to have more qualified mental health educators.
Right.
But then again, we've still got to have results. We got to have some accountability
And
for
again,
those tax dollars.
I don't even mind that because it's still going into the classroom. It's still going directly
Good
to the
point.
students. I mean,
It's still a classroom.
right. When you and I were kids, they had the special ed department, special education department, and those mentally handicapped, physically handicapped, they were set aside. We changed that policy and went to what we called mainstreaming. And mainstreaming was getting those people back into the classrooms. In some instances, that's very, very good. In some, it's not. They're disruptive, and you need to figure out a better way to handle that situation. But for the most part, the mainstreaming was a good idea, and it will cost more money to have someone who is sitting with those people in that same classroom.
Yeah.
But the mainstreaming was a good step forward.
But that means you reduce the staff in the records keeping, or we don't need all the pencil sharpeners.
We don't need the third assistant administrator.
Right.
You know, that's
good point.
And this is where we need to do more of. And we looked at it when I was in the legislature, but we need to consolidate more. Not consolidate the school districts, because Onalaska and Holman are not going to consolidate. There's too much community identity in the schools, and that's fine. But consolidate where you can on the purchase of goods and on meals and all of the things that you can do when you have a bigger group. Yes, the CISAs are able to do that to some extent, but we need to find efficiencies there. But for the most part, we need to also recognize that since in the last 10, 15 years, we have many fewer students than we had 10 or 15 years ago. And yet we're spending much, much more than we did.
That's a really good point. Tom Tiffany brought it up too the other day, the idea that reducing any duplicative efforts in different jurisdictions.
Right.
I never thought about it from the school administration's point of view.
Right.
Maybe there are ways that school districts can consolidate efforts instead of each of them doing the same thing, duplicating all those efforts, have something that overshadows or overlaps a little bit better.
Yeah. Onalaska has a superintendent, so does Holman, so does West Salem. Why would we need all of those different superintendents and all the support staff that comes with them? Could we not have one superintendent that oversees 2 or 3 school districts?
That's an interesting idea.
I mean, it's where the costs are the greatest. Let's figure out how we can figure out greater efficiencies.
Or identify duplication and find ways of making it simpler.
And if there are reasons why we can't do that, I'm open to hearing those.
No, I think these are great things to debate, regardless of what party people are from.
Right.
These are things that affect all of our children, whether we're Democrat or Republican.
Right. I mean, taxes are a significant part of our lives. And you and I are at a point where we can probably afford those taxes and still survive. We still have.
I'm still going to complain about it, though.
We're going to complain, but it's not going to affect us quite the way it affects our children, who are wondering how they're ever going to get into a home.
That's right.
They can't imagine how that's ever going to happen, and yet they will still pay significant taxes. The other reform that I've always said is that we should have our income taxes that we have to write a check for at the end of every month.
Yes,
it's not just an automatic.
You have to be cognizant of what is going on.
Right. You need to be aware, and I mean, they've even gotten away from the paper stub that we used to get for our income, where we used to look at it and go, wait a minute, where's all this money going? Why is that? Write it out. You have to write your check to Social Security. You have to write your check. You have to be aware of the fact, or do the electronic debit, but you have to approve it. That this is how much you're spending in taxes, in sales and income, and not sales. It's going to be a little more difficult to do that. But all of those things make people aware, and once people are aware of how much they're paying in taxes, you will see reforms.
Yeah, that's a really good way to put it. It reminds me, too, being in IT, as long as I have, every now and then we have conversations about, are we making things too automated? Are we making things too easy and simplified? Yeah. There are some things that you really should know and understand that are happening. Sometimes if you do things manually, it calls out and shines a light on, maybe we shouldn't do it this way.
Right. Yeah.
I love that idea.
There's an app out there, and we've all seen We've all seen the commercials for it that says, "So, how many services are you paying for right now?" Well, let me put this download this
Yeah,
app. Is it
right.
Rocket Mortgage or something like that? Let me download this app and we'll show you that you're paying for 3 Zoom subscriptions. You have 2 Hulu subscriptions,
Right.
anything like that. Well, okay, how much are you paying automatically for taxes? How much is automatically coming out of your check every month for income tax and FICA tax and
That's
all those
smart.
type of things? So that's a reform that I think could really change and bring much greater accountability to our government.
Yeah, that would be a really smart idea. And not only the transparency of it all too, but just the accountability.
Yep.
Like we were talking about with schools, for sure. So much money goes in there, and the grades keep going down.
Mm-hmm.
The scores keep going down. The DPI ends up like shifting the rules about what it means to pass.
Right.
It's ridiculous what's going on. We need accountability in these things. And I know everybody wants to make sure we have good education in the state of Wisconsin.
Yep.
We just need to make sure that all of our money that we're spending is getting results.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So that's one of the things that. So anyway, that we got off on this tangent when we started talking about Robin Vos.
That's right.
And Robin is the longest serving speaker in the state history. And I presented him with a plaque when he became the longest serving speaker that was signed by all of the living speakers.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. But that was, I think, 2 terms ago. So he's long past that, he's maybe 3 terms ago. And he will go down as one of the strongest leaders this state has seen. There's no question. He's been able to do things in holding together the assembly and making sure that they are able to move their agenda forward. You may not agree with all their agenda, but it certainly was something that he did very, very well with, and worked under Republican governors, worked under Democratic governors, and held majorities in both. So he will certainly be remembered for the successes that he's had. Unfortunately, there will be some, and as I talked about, I think it's Wisconsin Right Now is a think tank that we have in the state, and the author of that said, this speaker has come under more attacks from the right than any speaker prior, and we will recognize after he's gone the strength and the ability that he provided. And did he overturn the 2020 election in Wisconsin? No. Did he have any kind of authority to do so? No.
Exactly.
Does that matter to anybody who wanted to attack him? No. It's that kind of foolishness that he's been able to overcome and still move forward with.
He's had a level head through a lot of that kind of turmoil, like you said. I remember those controversies about overturning the 2020 election, and I thought there are many more things that are important that we should be talking about.
We should, and especially once somebody said, he doesn't have any authority to do anything like that.
Right.
As soon as that came out, people should have said, okay, well, let's move on. But that's not what happened.
No.
They simply said, well, Robin Vos is figuring out ways that he doesn't have to do it.
And to your point earlier, I mean, this was one of those things where the social media just went crazy.
Absolutely.
And it was just so brainless.
He faced stronger primaries over the last couple of elections than I ever faced from a Democrat in the last, in the 16 years that I was there. It's absolutely insane. And of course, some of that was funded by Democrats who wanted to cause as much trouble as they could. But I wish Robin the best. I mean, I consider him a friend. I enjoyed sitting next to him in the legislature. I enjoyed having him on my leadership team when I was speaker. He has been a tremendous leader, and I think Wisconsin is much better off for the years that we had him as in the legislature.
Yeah, well said. Very well said. It's going to be interesting too. Correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems like one of his tactics was the use of constitutional amendments to try to get things done. Was that something that he introduced, or is that something that people have always been doing throughout? Because it seems like, the governor was vetoing everything the Republicans were trying to accomplish.
Right.
And so they went around the governor by going directly to the people for the constitutional amendments.
We've tried to do that. I mean, that's happened frequently in the state. I mean, the Republicans even went around Governor Thompson in his vetoes and the veto
Okay.
authority that the governor had. You may remember the Frankenstein veto and the Vanna White veto.
Oh yes, that's right.
And so those constitutional amendments were passed
Okay.
to try and prevent that type of thing. When you have a very important idea, something that you really shouldn't be messed with statutorily, you always try to codify it in the Constitution. That used to mean something. That used to be, okay, it's in the Constitution, so this is probably not going to be overturned.
Right.
With this Supreme Court, I don't think that's the case. I think, the Supreme Court, the Constitution could say it's absolutely 12 noon, this is 12 noon, and this means that it's 12 noon, and they'll say, no, it's midnight. There's no judicial ethic that is going to overcome their desire to just figure out what they want to have happen and do it.
Yeah, they're going to thwart the will of the people at every turn.
No question.
It's so scary where we're at with that.
It's unfortunate. It will. I mean, it's for those of us who want to stay in this state, it's going to be a problem. We're going to see a continued exodus from this state. We're going to lose another congressperson after the 2030 election or 2030 census.
Yeah.
I mean, our numbers are going down. It's not going down in the numbers that we see in Illinois and California, but people are leaving. And it's not just the government, but it certainly has a part of it.
Yeah, that's a good point. Well, sir, we have been going now for almost a full hour.
Wow. Goes quick.
Anything else on your mind that you want to make sure we get in?
Did I mention the Badgers are going to the Elite Eight? I wanted to get that in because I wasn't sure I'd have a chance.
You definitely got that in.
Good. I think it's going to be an interesting month. We're going to be moving forward here in March. It will be interesting as far as I think we're going to start to see the economy turn. I think we're going to see public opinion continue to start moving in the favor of the president. I don't know that it will be enough to overcome the wave that's coming in November, but it might temper it a bit.
Good point.
It might temper it a bit. I think one of the best tests of that will be right here in the 3rd Congressional District. I mean, this is one of the top targets, and we are going to see more money and more attacks poured in here than we've seen in a very long time.
Yeah.
Derek Van Orden will come under every attack that he's had to face. And it will be one of those where we'll see whether or not we, as the people of Western Wisconsin, are willing to put up with it and reward those who would attack in that manner,
right,
and give them this congressional seat.
Well, and I'm glad you brought that up too, because I just saw that that congressman from Colorado who was in town rooting for the Democrats, and I don't know which Democrats brought. I think it might have been Rebecca Cook who brought him in.
Yeah.
I mean, these people are complete extremists.
Yeah. Well, Colorado's lost their minds. It's insane. But
But for our Wisconsin politicians to be embracing that level of extremism, that's scary.
Yeah.
And I think Congressman Van Orden has done a really good job of being sort of that middle of the road. He's trying to represent everybody here.
Sure. I mean, he's certainly taking some votes I didn't agree with. We're more moderate than I thought he should have been. But does that mean I'm not going to vote for him? Of course not.
Right.
I'm absolutely voting for him.
Yeah. What is it? I think it might have been Reagan who said my 80% ally is not a 20% enemy.
Exactly right.
Let's not focus on the 20% where we disagree. Let's focus on the areas where we do agree.
Right.
And then, join arms in those ways. And yeah, I mean, it came up the other night with a friend talking about some of the area conservatives who want to have purity tests.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
And if you don't reach their purity test, then you're just out.
Right.
And that is the dumbest thing you could ever do.
And so we'll just have to live with the Democrats, for the period of time until we can get our right person.
How is that going to work out for us?
Horribly.
While we're all, becoming socialist, communist government, like what you see in New York. That's exactly what ends up happening.
Right. I'm looking forward to when Mamdani is going out and raising money for Democrats. He will be speaker and special guests at Democratic campaigns all over the country. I doubt Rebecca Cook will bring him in, but you never know.
She said she was going to endorse him.
Okay.
She endorsed him right on camera.
There we go. Yeah. I mean, to see, I guess what I don't understand, because, they've always come after me and they've come after Republicans saying, do you really support Donald Trump when he says this? It's like, no, I don't support what he said, but I'm supporting all of his policies.
Right.
Everything he's done, I've been supportive of. That's fine. My question is, do you really support what the socialist Democrats of the country are doing policy-wise? Do you really think that's the direction to go? I mean, I've heard that the New York City Council is actually considering an ordinance that would make it illegal for people to leave New York, for the rich to leave New York, because it's their duty to stay and pay the taxes.
Isn't that slavery?
It's absolutely, it's craziness.
And it reminds, you know what, let's close with this, because this is something that I repeated so many times on the podcast. I'll close it with this. I truly believe that the Democrats are going back to their roots.
Yeah.
And by their roots, I mean the Confederacy.
Mm.
They are committing the kind of insurgency that they refused to follow the law
Mhm.
in the 1800s.
Right.
The law that freed the slaves. They refused to follow that law.
Right.
And they created the Confederacy as a result.
Yep.
Today, they refuse to follow immigration law.
Right.
And instead of creating a confederacy, instead of seceding from the Union, they have created sanctuaries instead.
Yeah.
And they feel like that's okay.
Yeah. No, that's good.
That is not okay.
Yeah.
It is against the law to be here illegally.
Yep.
And they are flouting the law.
Yeah, I hadn't really thought of it that way, but it's an interesting insight that the Confederacy in the 1800s was just located in the South. Now we have pockets of insurgents.
Sanctuaries are everywhere.
Yeah. Huh. Interesting.
But yeah, I was making the case that I felt like Minneapolis was going to be Fort Sumter.
Yeah.
I mean, they were crazy time up there.
Absolutely.
But yeah, anyway, that I've been saying it for months.
Right.
It's an insurgency. These are not protesters. These are insurgents.
Right. Right. And I'm stunned at the number of people who honestly believe that the only reason socialism has never worked in the history of man is because they aren't the ones who've tried it. Are
Right.
you kidding me? There's no way in the world it can work.
There's no evidence anywhere in the history of the world showing that socialism actually works.
It can only turn into tyranny. That's because socialism, the idealistic version of socialism completely ignores human nature.
Right.
And when you do that, you do it at your own peril.
Exactly. Well, and you look at, I think it might have been you who recommended Atlas Shrugged to me many years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And that the part of that novel where they talk about the benefits of capitalism and how it is the most moral form of economics ever.
Right.
Because it requires free trade.
Yep.
It requires, I have something of value, you have something of value, we trade it.
Yep.
I have a skill, you have a paycheck to give me in return for my skill. It is free trade. Once you start getting into socialism, if you take my money and then give it to someone else, it's just legal theft.
Right.
At that point.
That's really what socialism is.
That is exactly what socialism is.
Right.
It's legal theft.
Right. Legalized.
Legalized theft. Yeah, that's a better way to put it.
Yeah, it's true. So on that happy note.
On that happy note, thank you very much, my friend, for being here. And yeah, take care.
I'll see you in March.
All right.
All right.
I want you